Hello, and welcome to my shop. My name is Jeff Cantor. I'm the master carpenter for Maurer Productions Onstage. Currently, we're working on our May 2011 production of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which is the musical based on the 1990s movie. This evening, we're going to be making some spindles. These are going to be used as part of a fake concrete railing. This is the prototype. As you can see, it is made out of insulating foam, which after wood is one of our favorite set construction materials. It's lightweight, relatively strong, not too expensive, and very easily shaped. The spindles are about 24 inches long and roughly 7.5 inches in diameter at their widest points. In order to make this shape, we need a blank that is larger than this that we can then cut down on the lathe. To get the proper diameter, the blanks we've made up are 8 inches square. Easy to do with 2-inch foam, 4 layers, cut into 8-inch strips. You'll notice there's a wood center. This was inserted into the design to add some strength, both when the spindle was in the railing, and also in case someone might accidentally kick it or hit it to keep it from being kicked out. Inserting the wood is relatively easy. After the individual layers are cut, the center layers had a dado cut into them, a rabbet cut into them, one on each side. Makes room for a 1x2 wooden center. You simply add 2 more layers, one top and one bottom, and we get our 8x8 square. Of course, it doesn't hold together very well. To solve that, use a little brush-on contact cement and clamp it together for a while. So this is the last of our blanks. Voila. Ready to go, almost. One issue we have is while these blanks are 8 inches from here to here and 8 from here to here, the diagonal across them is greater than that, and unfortunately is a little bit larger than will fit in the lathe. So what we need to start by doing is cutting the corners off with the table saw so that it will fit on the lathe. Now we have the blanks cut down, but there's a couple more steps we need to do before we mount them on the lathe. First, we need to make sure we find the true center of them so they're not offsides and wobble when they're mounted on the lathe. And second, in order for the lathe to have something to bite into, we're going to need to mount these mounting blocks on them. You notice the diagonal cuts that have been made in them. That does 2 things. 1, it finds the true center of these blocks, and 2, it gives the lathe head something to grab onto. But the next step in preparing the blanks to mount them on the lathe is to mount the mounting blocks. Now, as I'd said earlier, the foam layers are put together using a brush-on contact cement. This is very good, dries relatively quickly, but it requires a reasonable amount of clamping pressure, as you had seen before. We need something that works faster here. So instead, we're going to use a spray adhesive. Spray it onto the mounting block, line it up, making sure that the lines line up all the way around, and then mount it on the lathe. This stuff dries quite quickly. Spray a good coat on the back side of each mounting block. Line up the first one. Making sure to obtain the firm contact. Line up the second one, pressing on both ends to keep them in line. Get the head end lined up with the teeth in the grooves. And we come down to the tail end. Put that single point in the center to hold the piece in place. So now we have our blank cylinder. The next thing to do is take our template and use this to mark out where we need to cut the different parts of the profile. And then mark each transition. This is actually easier done on this side. Once the piece is spinning, those lines will form a very faint shadow, so we'll need to make them darker. So now we know roughly where from top to bottom we need to cut. The question is, to what diameter? So, we get out our prototype again, and we measure the diameter of our first segment and compare it to the blank we're dealing with. We need to take a little bit off. We'll do that one segment at a time. So we continue working on our profile, checking periodically with the prototype, making sure we're keeping things lined up properly, and of course continuing to measure the diameter that we're at in each segment. This last section, or this middle section, we will do last after doing the bottom and the top, because this is actually the hardest profile to do. Now we're going to complete the spindle by doing the middle curved section. This is one of the more difficult parts. We'll start by getting this in part here, neck down to the correct diameter, and finishing this part of the profile here. Then work the long curve. Now we'll need to move the tool rest to the middle section of the spindle so we can do the complex curve in the middle. Curve is pretty good. So we look at the curve on our prototype, we look at the curve on the piece we're making. This is a little bit more gradual, a little bit flatter, and the bulk is a little bit more at the bottom. So now we'll go back to cutting the piece we're working on and just doing this by eye to flatten this out here and keep more of the bulk at the bottom. And again, just visually comparing the two, this looks a lot closer. And I think I'm going to call this done. You'll notice there's still a lot of pock marks and small ribs in the foam. To cover that up and also allow us to put a paint and texture on it, whatever the scenic artist feels is most appropriate to give us a look of concrete, the next step will actually be to coat each of these, wrap them in cheesecloth soaked in a mixture of latex paint and wood glue. It'll give it a hard exterior that can be more easily painted, as I said, to look like concrete. Add it to our collection over here. And now we have 3 here plus the prototype, so 4 down, 5 more to go. We'll get started on the next one.